What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of, yep, you guessed it, the H Panel. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I am joined by Farron Dozier. Farron is a 24-year U.S. Army veteran who shares his personal experiences and journey with sickle cell trait to help raise awareness for both sickle cell trait patients and soldier mental health. Farron was so fun to talk to, and this is a really great episode, and I wanted to thank him again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Also, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that this is actually my 1 year anniversary of the Mental Corner. Woo! I'm actually very excited about this, guys, so I just wanted to shout out to everyone listening right now because you guys are what keep me going, truthfully. And I'm just really thankful for all of your support, and I'm really thankful that I have been given this opportunity to do this stuff for you. I mentioned this briefly in my last video, but I was doing the analytics for the H panel, and it's been streamed almost 10,000 times in 18 different countries, I think. So if you're listening to this right now, man, I appreciate the hell out of all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know what to say. All I can say is that here's to another great year. Before we get started here, guys, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars on podcast platforms, share with someone who might want to hear this episode. This is a really great one, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. Thank you all so much for your support. I love you all. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel. We are live. Farron, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing this morning?
I can't complain. You know, I woke up, did the same thing as always, checked my phone, and had a coffee, and that's it. Pretty exciting.
Hey, I say when I wake up, hey, I'm alive, and everything else is a bonus. So here we are.
Yeah, you got to be grateful, man. It's important.
Definitely.
So you're a 24-year retired Army veteran, right?
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what inspired you to go into the Army?
So my uncle was in the Air Force Reserve, and I was 17, and so we were talking one day. He's like, "What are you gonna do when you get out of high school?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm not sure. Like, I wasn't even really thinking about it, except for buying a car." And so he was like, "You know, you could try the military." And I'm like, I never really had any interest except for playing with the army men with toys and stuff like that. And I have friends in ROTC, but I was like, nah, I don't know. So he was like, look, you can get benefits and all these things he kind of explained to me. And so I was like, you know what? I'll try it. So he was like, look, if you want to go part-time first, like reserves or National Guard, and then if you like it, go full-time. Because if you go full-time first and you don't like it, you're stuck in that contract, which is 3 to 4 year contract. So I was like, all right, cool. So I initially, signed up for the Air Force, and for some odd reason, they said that you could join another branch.
Mm.
And I'm like, all right. Like I was young, I didn't think nothing of it. Like, all right, cool. So when I got home, a National Guard recruiter called the house, and he wanted to come by, and so he came to my grandmother's house and talked to me and said, "I'll give you, $2,000 bonus and this for signing up, and this is National Guard, so you help with the disasters of the city and things of the state." And I was like, 19, like, you know what, that's cool, let's do it. And so I signed up, and I ended up enjoying it, and I went full time after 4 years.
Right on. Yeah, as a 19-year-old kid, how do you say no to $2,000 right away?
Right? I told you I wanted a car.
Yeah, that helps right there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what I think my biggest question, because I know nothing about the military, no disrespect, of course. I know nothing about it.
No problem.
What's the training like, both mentally and physically, to like both get in and then when you're in to stay in?
Initially, it was like my uncle told me, make sure you start exercising because you have to do physical fitness tests. I had never shot a weapon, so I didn't have any. There were some questions I didn't know to ask when I signed up, and so, but when I got there, it was like a bunch of people, guys from all over the world, all over the country, and everybody's like kind of nervous and scared, but at the same time excited. And it really builds that camaraderie, like almost instantly, like you're almost instantly connected. And as you go through the training, like for me, it was probably like the third week in basic, and I was on the top bunk, and I was looking at the ceiling, and I was like, "What am I doing here?"
Mm.
And that was the moment my brain clicked, and it became a routine, and I was, what we call my mind shifted, and I became a soldier. That at that moment I became a soldier, and so I took all of it in. They train you how to survive, how to take care of your buddy. I mean, all your senses. I mean, it really trains you uh, to take care of your troops and your service members. But one thing I learned now, looking back at it, and the military is very powerful at doing it, is objectification.
Mm.
And objectification is when you can alter that person from being a human being to being a terrorist. And then now you're a terrorist, so I can kill you. But what they don't realize is one day your brain is going to remember, oh, shoot, that was a person. And so our brains are malleable. So they train you. I mean, they get you to the point where like I said, you'll die for this guy next to you that you just met, you know, 8 months ago. And so for me, it was all positive. I mean, at that point in my mindset, this was my job,
Hmm.
and I was committed to doing it. And like I said, they talk about your girlfriend or wife, and if you were supposed to have a girlfriend or wife, we would issue you one. So don't be worried about your girlfriend at home and what your wife is doing, because if you train how you're going to fight. So if you're on the battlefield and you're in war and you're daydreaming about who's my girl talking to, like that 1 second, you can get your whole squad killed. So it's really that mental toughness that they break down, and then they build it back up with all that, like I said, the mental toughness and the knowledge that it takes to be a soldier, which is only about 2% or less serve in the military in the United States. So a very small percentage of people.
So what that click that you were talking about, was it like a noticeable click or did over time you were like, "Oh, I'm in this."
Oh no, it was that night. I mean, it was literally that night. Like, because I think we had did some training all day. I think I got smoked for getting in trouble. Like it was all like okay. And then, like I said, I was just like, what am I doing here? And then it was that moment where, oh, and then everything just became a routine from that point on.
Hmm. So this objectifying that you're talking about, where like you look at the person and you just identify them as a terrorist, and then you said later in life you realize that was a person. Does that
Mhm.
does that have any weight on you mentally?
I'm gonna give it to you in the sports aspect.
Let's hear it.
Lakers and Clippers.
Mm.
When you put that jersey on and that Laker fan puts his jersey on and that Clipper fan puts, now I talk to you as that jersey, not as a person.
Mm.
And you see how people fight, at events and games because it's the jersey. And then they realize afterwards, oh, I just beat up this guy and there's consequences. So with the military, it's the same. And I think, not that I think, but we're taught that, right? In our environment, because our parents teach you how to be safe and hey, don't mix with these kind of people, stay away. So you start objectifying, you know, people around you at a very young age. It just sometimes when the context changes or gets expanded, or it gets identified as this specific context, you can lose sight mentally for sure. And we do it, veterans. I mean, I'm labeled, that's an objectification right there. Homeless. I mean, we're labeling people, which doesn't allow me to connect to them, that humanity in that person.
Hmm. That's why there's
And
such
of
a
course,
yeah. That's why there's such a divide, right? Like that's why
oh,
like with you can even look at racism, like
oh, the
immediate.
same.
You like
It's
yeah.
no, yeah, no, wait, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was very fortunate as a kid where like I was exposed to all different cultures right away. Like my schools
Mhm.
were multicultural in my neighborhoods, but um like you'll ask someone who's just flat out racist, like why? And they can't give you a reason. They were just brought up like that. I don't It's messed up.
So here's how I learned about racism. You know, if a person is racist, this is my question, and I want to actually do a show about this. Is and I post on it too. If a person is racist and they say they're racist, and you ask them why are you racist, and if they give you a reason like, oh well, this guy or my grandfather, if they're honest with you, they'll tell you, oh, my grandfather told me not to play with you, or whatever that was. Well, if you take that reason that they give you and you have a effective conversation with that person, you could actually disappear that reason because it's not their own reason. It's influenced.
Hmm.
Right. So it's either there was a rob. Maybe some people I was robbed by this black guy, so now I hate all black people. Like those are things that influence your perspective. So if there's a reason, I'm willing. I want to talk to people who are racist because I want to find out like where it came from, and then and then disappear that reason. But if a person says I'm racist because I'm racist, you don't want to mess with them because there's no reason behind it. Like they are racist. So you have to listen to why people give you reasons, and usually it's an influence that's not their own. And we don't take time to listen to people, like you said. We don't take time to listen to people about, well, why do you think like that? Instead of being offended by what you said about my ancestors, like, but why do you think like that? And then you'll hear where that person got it from. You're like, oh wow, that's different. I never thought of it that way. And then so there's no argument. And I think that's what's missing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, no kid's born racist, right?
Right.
Yeah, man. So you I was reading up a little bit about you, and you said that in 2006 you had an incident. Um, for the viewers, do you mind talking about what that incident was?
Oh, that was I call it the perfect morning, man. It was around my 17th year, and I was E7, and I was working on my master sergeant rank to become an E8, and so that was the school that's required to graduate and be on the promotion list. So I'm there, like normal. I've done that test, like I said, about 17 years. Twice a year we take it, and I got up, did the push-up, sit-ups, and I was out doing the 2 mile run. And when I came across for that last lap, I could hear the instructor, 15:45, 15:46. And I'm like, hey, I'm cool. Like I'm 36 years old. So I had like 17:21 and I hear 15. And I'm like, oh shoot, I'm about to, get a good score. And so we're trained to sprint that last lap. And so my mind, my brain kicked in, hey, let's get this run over with. So I take off. And I did feel like this electrical charge like come over my body, but I didn't think nothing of it. So I, sprinted 16 minutes, great time, put my hands over my head, get air in my lungs, all the stuff we're trained to do. And all of a sudden my peripheral got dark. And I'm like, man, I don't feel well. And then I started getting nauseous. And so I closed my eyes, I laid down on the ground. And when I opened my eyes, everything was spinning like a million miles an hour. Medics came and got me, took me to the hospital, and the doctor comes in at some point and says, "You ever had kidney problems?" I says, "No." He said, "What do you do now?" And then he walks out,
What?
and I'm like, what? And so my instructor's there, and I'm like, what's going on? So the doctor comes back in and says, you know what? It's probably a freak accident. You was probably dehydrated, heat stroke. I'm like, it's like 6:30 in the morning, bro. Like, what heat stroke are you talking about? And so he's like, I'm gonna give you one more IV, go back to the barracks, take the day off, you should be fine. So I did that, and I woke up probably like around 2 o'clock or so, and I was worse. Like I was throwing up, everything was still spinning. I was nauseated, like I was in a real bad state. So I lay back down, and I know it's 4:30 because my classmates come into barracks, and they're like, "You okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." So they rushed me back to the hospital that night, and the night doctor did some tests. And there's a condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is a skeletal muscular disorder. And so what was happening was my muscles had started to leak negative, myoglobin, like muscle particles, into my bloodstream, and also releasing negative toxins from the muscles. So that was causing the renal failure that the doctor saw in the morning. but obviously he didn't recognize it, whatever that was. But the night doctor saw it, and they can tell by your creatinine kinase levels, which is CK levels, and mine were 12,000 and rising, and at my age, it's supposed to be like 150.
Wow.
So when he saw those numbers, he was like, "Hey, like this is connected to this condition." And so uh, what he did was he just put me on IVs for 4 days. That's how long it took to flush my kidneys, and my kidneys were at about 50% each by the time I got to the hospital that night. So I was having I was dying, having renal failure.
Wow. And is that like was that condition instantaneous or was that built up over time?
So that was 2006. 2010, I'm on the base because now the military is trying to diagnose me. I could barely walk. I'm having problems. And now I'm having mental health issues because I think my career is over. And I happened to pass the officer that I served with during the war. We were together in 0405. He was my platoon leader. So we passed on the base in the car and we pulled over. He's like, "How you been?" I'm like, "Man, you don't want to know." He's like, "Nah, tell me." And so I'm like, "Man, my muscles, like I can barely walk." I said, I think I'm getting depressed. Like I don't even want to live no more. He's like, "You know what? Something like that happened to me where my muscles locked up, but I have sickle cell trait. So I have to drink extra water, take these vitamins." And I'm like, wait. Why does that sound familiar? And then I remembered my physical from 1999 that the Air Force Base found my trait. And so when he said that, it triggered my memory. I went and got that paperwork, and sure enough, it said positive sickle cell trait. And so I went home and did research and was like, found that athletes, military people exercising have collapsed and have died from that condition with the rhabdomyolysis. And so when I took it to my rheumatologist, because now I have arthritis and I have to see this rheumatologist, I took it to her like, "Hey, can you check this out? Because I think this is what happened to me." And so she looked it over and she retested my blood again. Sure enough, positive sickle cell trait. And we were able to diagnose that incident from 2006 to connect it with the rhabdo and my trait. Because what happened was my red blood cells that are trait mutated. And so I lost oxygen through the mutation of the red blood cells, and that's triggered the rhabdo. So it was like that whole combination. So yeah, it ended my career.
Mhm. So it was like a slow burn.
Oh man, it was bad.
Brutal. How do you so you've had this since like you were diagnosed firstly with in 1999 for it.
For the sickle cell trait, yeah.
Yeah, so how were you able to physically get through military training?
Well, so what's oddly is when I started now in becoming this advocate, when I look back, the army, what they do is they test for anemia. So I don't know what happened, but I went through the physical like everybody else. But I believe the Army they test for anemia. Now the Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Navy, because of those certain job skills, that is on their checklist to test because of the pilots, and scuba diving is not good for people with sickle cell trait. So those compressed air kind of jobs are not good for a person with trait. So those branches do test for it, but for whatever reason, I can't tell you that why the Army did not find it.
Mm. And have they changed that or is it still not being tested?
So recently, they put out an article that they are starting to test for sickle cell trait because there was, like I said, from it's been happening since the 70s and 80s, and so I'm not going to say that I influenced that, but there's been a lot of conversations I've had, and I go to military bases to speak. And I know when I collapsed in '06, it went across to all of the military schools about my incident. So, and I met doctors that have been working with the military to figure out what's causing it. And even there's a military college that I've worked with in the last 2 years that they're doing research to find out why African American soldiers, why some have this collapse and some don't. So I think they're trying to figure out and just keep everybody safe. And so the Army has now announced officially that they are going to be testing specifically for sickle cell trait.
It's huge, man.
Yeah,
So,
I don't really agree with it
mhm.
because there are 400 plus types of red blood cell conditions, And so to single one out,
True.
that's where it gets kind of the level of, you know, are they going to use that against me? But there are other red blood cells like D trait, C trait, thalassemia, OARAB that, if expressed with exertion, could trigger the same kind of incident. So yes, I want to protect trait carriers, but we don't want people to have that impact their ability to have a career
Hmm.
in the service as well. So it's a real fine line. And then I look at what's the value of life. Then after that,
Yeah, right. I wonder if they'll be able to find something where, like a test where they can just identify a red blood cell issue as opposed to singling it to it, or like narrowing it down to one specific thing.
well, they do have a hemoglobin electrophoresis is a test.
Mm,
It's like a blood test that how those red blood cells mutate is how they determine what inherited gene you have because it's all inherited.
right.
So they do have that in place. Some of those red blood cell conditions don't get tested at birth, um, or you have to do extra tests to find out. And a lot of parents don't know until something like that happens.
Hmm. So it's inherited. So did one of your parents have it?
Yes, my dad. My dad had it, and we believe that his dad had it, and so because he had a cousin, I have a cousin with sickle cell disease, and my dad's a couple of my dad's sisters have the trait, and my other cousin has the trait. So again, I didn't know. Um, when I was 5 years old, my left arm would ache like crazy, and my grandmother would hold me over the sink and run warm water over it. Only thing that would soothe the pain. And they told my parents in '75 it was growing pains. Well, I'm 50, and that pain it ain't went away.
You're still growing.
Yeah, I'm still growing because it ain't went away. So what we're discovering now, as I've been doing this advocacy work, is that some people with sickle cell trait, we do have complications, and we do have pain, and some people have died from exertion. So, and it hasn't really been addressed.
Hmm. So when you were in the military training and doing the hard, demanding work, um, did you just kind of shove those feelings off and assume it was just soreness?
Yeah, like most athletes that I've met, the muscle cramps. I had a couple bloody noses a couple times, and like I said, my arm would ache, but it was like it's part of the conditioning, right? Yeah, okay. It's like you don't go to sick call,
Hmm.
like you soldier through it,
Yeah. It,
and so it just became a part.
pain's just weakness leaving the body. All the sayings that athletes and people say.
Yeah, and now we have to change all that because like coaches say that water is weakness, especially in preseason training, and that's where it happens a lot. So now we're working with coaches to be like, hey, look, if you have a person with these inherited genes, they've got to have hydration. And it's not that they're less of an athlete or a soldier, it's that their body needs to take that break and they need that hydration. So it's a battle because like you said, sometimes people look at water as weakness.
Yeah, that's crazy to me because I remember when I was growing up in swimming, it would be like whoever drinks the least water in the practice wins. Like what a stupid thing to say.
Exactly, right?
Water's weakness, it's like a human need.
So when we go out now, because I actually work with another organization, Devar Darling, who played for the Ravens.
Mm,
His twin brother died in preseason uh, football camp in college.
wow.
And so from sickle cell trait exertion, doing the mat drills. And so they're both in the gym, opposite sides. And his brother, the coach is like, "You'll pass out before you die." Well, he passed out like 3 times and then he died. And so Devar was able to go on and made it to the NFL and play football. And so he has a foundation in honoring his brother. So I met him. And so we're like a retired Army and a retired NFL player taking on this conversation. So it's really cool.
It's amazing, man. Not that story of his brother, rest in peace, but I mean
Well, yeah, yeah.
the raising awareness part is awesome.
Yeah.
So you said that in 2009, 2010 you were kind of going through a depression because you were thinking your career was over. And did it end
Mhm.
around then? Was that kind of when?
It actually took them till 2013 is when I officially retired. So it took them once they started the process in 2010. It took almost 3 years to get all my paperwork situated, and of course, I had some appeals because I wasn't trying to get out. So by the time it all was said and done, I retired in 2013.
So from the incident in 2006, you just kept pushing through?
Yeah. So after I went home from that incident, I was going. They sent me to my a doctor, and he kind of maintained my red blood cells. Checking my blood, and so he says, "Well, we're gonna. I want to get back to school." So I started exercising to see, what was going on with my body. And every time I got on a treadmill or exercise, when I got off, it felt like I just got off a roller coaster. Like I was not in a good, I wasn't in a good state. And so for 2.5 years, I was in that regimen of trying to figure out with the doctor how to get back. Can I run again? What's going on with my body? And so for 2.5 years, I did that. And then my doctor was like, you know what? You just can't run anymore. And I'm like, all right, it's the military. So I could do the bicycle, I could do the walk. Like there's alternate events. The myth is real, so I don't swim. I swim like a Chevy truck. I say I swim like a Chevy truck, like a rock, oh, like a rock.
Oh
So
man.
I said I could do the walk or the bicycle, so I'm cool. I should be fine. I've seen worse conditions, people stay in the military. And when I turned that paperwork in, 2.5 years later, almost 3 years, the military was like, "Oh no, like we got to find out what happened to you." And then that's when one day I was at the office and the email came in, and so I opened it up, and I was in charge. So of course I'm looking. I'm gonna see what my name says first. And as I read my name, it said pending discharge, and I'm like, nobody's like what? Like wait, like wait. Nobody's talked to me. Like, isn't there a process? And so when I called the state surgeon, I'm like, hey, I got this document with my name and my soldiers, from our physicals and stuff. And I'm like, why does it have pending discharge? She's like, oh, that's a mistake. You have to go through a medical board. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I already downloaded it. When I read it, I downloaded that. And so now can you imagine I'm at work like a zombie, and every time that phone rings, is this the call that's gonna end my career? And that's when I look back to peel it off, that's what I could see could have been the pivotal point of reading that word, reading pending discharge, and what I made it mean about myself and my life, which was my life is over.
Hmm. So that's kind of where like that depression really kicked in then?
Yeah. And I had it in 2006 because of my injury. So I was trying to manage it, and then I think that email was like the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Yeah.
So do soldiers when they're in like train not just training but like in the actual field when they're together, is mental health issues talked about amongst you guys?
We do briefings,
Mm.
um, like once a year as a check, as a check the box, but it's suicide prevention, and that's pretty much it. But a lot of times for me, what was my stress relief was basketball. So if I had stress or whatever, I would go to the gym, do my thing 3, 4 hours at a time, 3, 4 times a week, and just leave it on the court. But when I had that injury, I could no longer exercise.
Mm.
So I had no release of my stress anymore, which I started internalizing. And so most people have a stress relief in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So how were you able to relieve that stress then? No.
I wasn't. I wasn't. And so that was the thing. I remember one time I went to my mental health appointment, and my psychologist was like, "What do you want?" I want to play basketball. And
Yeah.
he was like, you know what? He's like, you know what? We're gonna end this session right now. Get your stuff. And he we walked to the gym. I got my ID, got a basketball. He opened the doors and said, just don't hurt yourself. And I could tell you, when I hit the gym, it was like only one guy on the far end of the court. I hit that gym, and I could smell, like the smell was enough. It was like, oh, like I'm here. I bounced the ball, took a couple of shots, and like that was like, and then like 30 minutes later, it was gone.
Oh man, yeah. You hear the ball hit the rim, or not the rim. Jesus, you hit the ball, hit the net. Oh,
And the bouncing of the floor, and then you can smell the sweat on the wall.
yeah, yeah.
I'm home. Like this is what I want. I want to play back. But and he kept telling me, you're gonna have to scale back your life. You're gonna have to scale back. I'm like, no, I'm I need to be in the gym, yo.
Hmm.
And we battled that, and that was because for I don't know how many years I used basketball as a stress reliever, and so because I couldn't physically exercise anymore, I had no other outlet.
So how when you're in that position, how do you take that? How do you just accept it?
I didn't.
Hmm.
I did. What I had to learn. Shoot, couple years later, when I took landmark education, is where I learned that s- it's not just the activity that makes us happy. It's also the experience. And so when people say happy, you can't make anybody happy. That's true. Like you have to generate your happiness within first. And so if you can't get to that activity of basketball, like for myself, I had to start talking to myself and internalizing, hey, but I can still be happy. Like I gotta generate this. It's not the activity, it's also the experience. And that's what I think that's when not think, but that's when mental health comes into play because we always think it's the activity and that'll make me happy. But you have to be able to generate that within yourself anywhere and be happy now, and then you know it doesn't matter what you're going to do, that you'll be happy wherever you are. But that takes a lot of development because we're not taught that as growing up.
Hmm. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's such a tedious practice to do, especially for guys. Like you said, we're never taught anything like that. We're taught two emotions. I love. Someone told me this. My friend, uh, I had a discussion with him like early 2020, but he was like, guys are taught two emotions growing up. You're taught to be happy and you're taught to be angry, and there's nothing in between. That's it. And I'm like, that is so like based on my experience, that's so true. Like we're never taught anything else. It's like, don't cry. Like stop crying. You're a man. You don't cry. And then when you get angry, it's like stop being angry. You're a hothead. Stop it. And it's like, well, what am I supposed like, what am I supposed to do here? So then we feel
Right.
so trapped inside our own head.
Welcome to being human.
Yeah, for real, man.
At the end of the day, that's what it is. Welcome. And as humans, we have, we're there's flaws. There's flaws, and there's things that again we don't get taught. And so how can we help this next generation understand that you can learn how to express yourself, and being angry doesn't always have to be a negative.
Mm,
It doesn't always have to be something that you have to with if you can articulate your anger and not project it on somebody else, it's a totally different dynamic.
mm-hmm,
And so I think that's what is missing in the foundation skills of this. And I again, objectification, mental health, that's a label that has so many dynamics underneath it. But oh yeah, it's mental health, and then what? You have to have that person be able to figure out what that is for them and get the work around that. And that was something that I didn't go to the VA for a long time because I don't have the PTSD of combat, but I have PTSD. I have trauma, and so I didn't think I'm a circle, and the VA classes are squares. So I didn't feel I fit in their programs because they're designated for combat related, injuries. And everybody's not a combat, we don't all have combat related injuries, but what we do have is the training that goes with it, and then whatever it is, those traumas that happen to us in service. So everybody's an individual, even though it all equates to the mental health conversation. And that label desensitizes us and people.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge umbrella term because
Mhm.
right now you hear mental health and you think it's targeted towards like one fourth or like maybe even half of the population, but it really targets everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone's got mental health. Like that's you have a brain.
Yes. and the silent. And so I've learned just over the last 10 years of those silent traumas, and they're not always traumatic as rape or molestation or things like that. They're very subtle, like this pandemic has caused exclusion. That's the worst thing you can do to a human being, is exclude them from their society or from being social. And as we were taught, I grew up in the 70s. I lived on punishment. Go to your room, you don't no TV. And you know we don't understand how those silent traumas affect the brain, and where emotions and short-term memory are stored at. And it could be as simple as you going from elementary to junior high school as a traumatic experience for yourself. It could be my second one was being I felt I was abandoned by my mother, but it was actually just I was a latchkey kid, and I had to walk home from school with the key, and I didn't have a babysitter. But an 8-year-old doesn't understand that at 8, unless you do your best to explain, hey, look, this is what's happening, and this is what you got to do. Come home. And my mom did all that, but when my mom said, "I'm leaving you," and that's all I heard. Like, I heard all the instructions, but the pain of my mom saying that I'm leaving you,
Mm,
it was like, well, why did you? And that's a whole nother story. But it was like, well, why did you come and get me from my grandparents? Like, why? And I could have just stayed there. And like, so an 8-year-old, a 90-minute at home by yourself feels like 20 hours.
yeah.
But it's your 8-year-old. But if you don't know that as a parent, and not educated, and you don't see the signs, you just think, oh, he's shy.
Yeah. Yeah. They just brush it off. But that's exactly it. It's just a lack of education.
Yeah.
Because and the problem, I think one of the problems is like everyone deals with everything differently. So how do you pinpoint like what triggers someone's trauma or triggers someone's mental health? Like it's almost like it's so hard to pinpoint because one little thing could set you off.
And that's what I'm saying. That we said that's the education. And like my daughter, my youngest daughter, she took child development courses, and she's also a landmark graduate as well. I put her in that course as well. And so when she took those child development courses, it kind of made sense. Like, if you really go study how a child does to get your attention and cries and all, like that brain is powerful, man. We discount the power of our brain, and I don't think people really understand that if you don't tell that child what's going on, that child will write their own script to the story, and that becomes their truth versus you giving them the truth. And you're like, oh, he's 5, he don't understand. Oh, you better believe that brain is, if you don't feed it the information, he's gonna go sit in that corner and he's gonna write his own script with what he's developed so far, and it's usually a negative context.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually that I'm not good enough, I'm not worth it, my mom doesn't love me, I can't trust like all those things. That 5-year-old brain is trying to make sense of life, looking at you as an adult, and it's gonna give something meaning, and it's usually to survive that moment, which is for them is a negative experience,
Yeah.
and we have to catch that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm when my parents split up. They didn't explain anything, and I was in grade 8, and they were like, yeah, we're splitting up, and I was just like, my brain was like, oh, it's my fault. Like,
Exactly.
why? Yeah, and for years, like I was like, yeah, it's totally my fault.
And that's why they say when children in divorces, children are hurt, because that same experience right there, because the child internalized it, because the parents, they don't know why they're really breaking up. And so it's like, we're getting divorced, and that's it. And now you're like, okay, then, like, it's my fault. Like what, like, what can I do to keep y'all together? And then you take all the blame, and then now you're gonna act all that out in your adult life and wonder why your relationships are failing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And we don't know that. We don't pay attention to those things.
Yeah, I know we should. There should definitely be a reforming of education. Just like you don't have to know, like you don't have to be an expert, but just
No.
the awareness, just know it's happening or know something could trigger. You know what I mean?
What you just explained and I'm explaining, they're called empirical truths.
Mm.
Like if you look in life, because here's the thing that I've learned is we all have human experiences. It's just how I respond and how you're going to respond. If I throw the ball at you, you might move left. You throw it at me, I might move right. It's the same ball, same experience, but depending on your environment and again, the stuff that you've made up in your mind of how to move from that ball is just so, but we all have, we're not different. We're really not different as people. Society has made us different with the labeling of blacks and whites and Asians and all that, and what they do with that. But when you get to the core of being human, we're not different at all.
Yeah.
At all.
It's just how we perceive things.
Yeah. Perception, interpretation, and perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
That's the three things that I look for now. When I have to filter my life now, perception was is huge. Especially as a child. That's what I'm saying. As a child, what child doesn't know what it is to be an adult? He doesn't know the struggles that. And then you look at your parents, 16 to 25. Most of our parents were some age between there when we were born. What do you know about, if you look at the empirical truth as an adult now, what did you know about life between 16 to 25?
Bro, I still don't know shit.
Exactly. So then how do we expect our parents to have it all figured out when we were born? You just see what I'm saying? And so that just understanding that little bit could give you some compassion for your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we go find out what was they dealing with when I was born. They were 20 years old. What? And so I had to do that,
Yeah.
and that's how I found my peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when you're a kid, you put your parents on such a huge pedestal, right? You're like they know everything.
Yeah.
And then as you grow up, you're like, oh, yeah, they didn't know much. And not that sounded mean, but like, you know what I mean?
No, they knew what their parents, they knew what they learned from their parents, and they're trying to either do that or do the opposite because whatever they didn't like about their parents, oh, I'm not gonna do that to my child, but you're still doing it in your own version, which your child's gonna turn out the same way you turned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's so weird when you get to that age that your parents were, and you're looking at it in their shoes, and you're like, wow, okay, damn, respect. I couldn't do it.
Having a child in the 70s, bro, I'm like, I don't know. And they weren't married,
Man.
and they pretty much broke up as I was born.
Mm.
It was like, and so none of their stories matched. At 40, I'm like, Dad, what happened when I was born? Mom, what happened when I was born? Two different stories. So I wrote a story in my head about what happened, and they have there's three different stories going on about what happened in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw them all away, like forget it. None of them are true.
Yeah, yeah. You forget that when you're talking to people or you're like judging people before talking to them. Like everyone's got a different story of the same thing. It's crazy,
Yeah.
man.
Society, man. Society has us corrupted.
Mm. I know they have us turning against each other.
It's corrupted, man. Not right or wrong, good or bad, but the word I use to describe it is corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
It's these kind of conversations that don't get to happen because we're trying to survive life and make it, and nobody wants to die before their time. So you have all these things, the pressures of life, and we want to be friends. Like, come on, that's everybody's not gonna like you, everybody's not gonna love you. But do we tell people? Do we tell our children that? No.
No, no. You set them up for failure almost. Give them an unrealistic expectation of life, and then they get out there. They're like, "What? Not everyone wants to be my friend." That was like me, man. I
Yeah.
like someone I forget. Like when I first started getting bullied in like elementary
Yeah.
school, I was like, "You guys don't like me? We're not singing Disney
Yeah.
songs and getting together? Like what?"
Unfortunately, that's the truth, and that's what we have to be able to teach that early
Mm.
And my dad would always tell me, my dad had, God rest his soul, he lived by cliches,
Mm,
right? And he grew up telling me two things that stuck out. There's no such thing as I don't know. So when he would come and pick me up and hang out and he asked me questions, I could not say I don't know. If you don't know, well, I'm gonna tell you the caveat to that.
mm,
If you don't know, we can go to the library, like we can find the answer. So that's how I grew up. Now, mind you, that worked in my military career because it helped me save soldiers' lives, being analytical and all that, analyzing stuff. But in relationships, that doesn't work, bro.
mm.
You can't analyze your partner,
They don't
right?
like that.
They don't like that. So in one hand, it worked, and in the other hand, it was like, why are my relationships failing? Because I needed answers, but not until I'm 50. So like 2 years ago, I heard a pastor teach some Bible principles, and he said that the best thing that you could say is I don't know. Know your limitations. Know yourself and know what you don't know, and be okay saying that you don't know it. So I all these years of my dad saying there's no such thing as I don't know, and at 48, I hear pastors say it's okay to say I don't know. My mind was like,
You're like, where the fuck was this before?
I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. And then the second one was my dad would tell me, it's not what people think about you, it's what you think about them that matters.
Mm.
Okay, exactly.
Wait, say that again?
It's not what people think about you, it's what you think about them that matters.
Okay.
Exactly. So imagine growing up as a kid and your dad is instilling you these cliches. And again, not until I'm in my 40s that I realize, Dad, you left out the main parts of that cliche. You didn't tell me who I needed to be. That takes a so to be that kind of person, it takes confidence, it takes courage, it takes being bold. Like there's a way you gotta be so those things that people say about you don't bother you.
Hmm.
The cliche was vague. I'm like, dude, I love you, but you gotta stop with the cliches because you left out the meat and potatoes. But I get his concern, his love for his son underneath all of it, which is what he was trying to do. Teach me that don't let people, whatever people say about me, don't let that bother me.
Hmm.
But there was still some missing pieces of that cliche that I didn't get till in my 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, he meant well. You can tell.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Like
for
he's
sure.
got the outer shell of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why they call them cliches because they sound good, but then you gotta figure out, okay, what does that like I said, what does that mean about me?
Hmm.
And it's like, dude, sticks and stones may, all that stuff, names will never hurt you. Oh yeah, names matter.
They hurt.
So it's all that. Yeah, exactly. So it's all that. And I'm like, and when he passed away, I was like, wow, dude, like he really, he really did his best. Like he really did his best with the knowledge that he had from his parents and his era. The dude was stand up. And I'm so glad I healed with him before he passed away to have no regrets and no resentment. That it was pure love.
Hmm.
Everything that he did for me.
That's important, man. Not closure, but to have peace with the people around you. That's I think a lot of people forget that life, like as cliche as it sounds, that
Mhm.
life is precious, and like holding grudges against like in certain situations it makes sense, but like having little petty grudges or like having strain in between people you do truly care about, like it's not worth it because you
No.
never know.
And again, I've gotten to be this person within the last 10 years because I did a lot of work, man. Like I did not want to just kill myself. Like I don't want to go out like that. So I did a lot of work just to be able to manage I kept I kept my sports car so when I was ready to commit suicide, I could just drive fast and get it over with. Like that's how much I had. But I didn't want to do that. So learning about our parents, Our parents are the most important people in our life. The two most important people in your life is your parents. And if you have a strain on that relationship, how do you think you're going to have a relationship with another person? If you got a strain on your mom relationship, that's going to impede on your relationship with women. It's all connected because the two most important people are our parents. And if you don't understand that and figure out what that is, it's going to affect your life. And I don't, I'm I have a relationship with Christ, but the Bible talks about honoring your father and mother, right? And that you may have long life. And what that is, you're not going to like your parents all the time. You're not even going to love your parents, but it's how you think about them, is what comes out of your mouth about them, is where you're hurting yourself. Because if you talk, well, I love my dad, like I love my dad, but he got on my nerve. And then when he got on my nerve, you're out of here, bro. Get out of here. I don't even want to talk to you. But then I would be sad because like, why can't I connect to my dad? Like for 35 years, that's how our relationship was. I love this guy, but he gets on my nerve. And I figured out what that was. And it was me. It wasn't even him. Nobody can make you mad. Nobody can make you have an attitude. Nobody can do any of that. It's just the stuff that I downloaded as a kid that was the behind all of that was well, he don't love me. So he never got a chance. I never gave him an opportunity to express that because I already had it in my mind. Well, you don't love me no matter. Oh, you're doing that because you don't love me. You're trying to make up for stuff.
Mm,
And that's the spirit behind our parents. And if you heal that spirit behind your parents, your whole life will open up because those are the two most important people in our life, man. And you got to do that work with your parents.
yeah.
You have to.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. On the um kind of moving on the topic
Yeah.
on the topic of suicide and suicidal thoughts. Um I read that suicide in the military has increased. And like you get those news articles every year because obviously what you guys are doing is like super mentally straining, like it's a lot on the brain, of course.
Hmm.
But they're saying like there's a spike now and it's higher than it's ever been. And if you're like, there's one example. Uh, do you know Major General Christopher Donahue?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't.
Yeah, so he's part of the 82nd Airborne Division, Fort Bragg.
Okay.
But he's making suicide prevention and mental health outreach like a top priority because last year alone they had in that little division they had 10 suicides for the
Hmm.
year, and the
Hmm.
year before they had 4. So 4 is already too many, but like
Yeah.
a 10 is a huge jump. So do you know if there's any reasoning behind this spike?
So I'm trying to find this chart and see if I have this chart in my phone, man. If not, I will share it with you another time. But here's from my perspective. My perspective. You got to look at that person's environment,
Mm,
right? So sometimes it's not just what happens in the service; it's also what was going on before service. I met people who were homeless before they join the military, do their term, get out of the military, and go right back to homelessness. Why? Because again, you have to look at the environment that they came from. And sometimes the military, it whatever those sentences are, like I would just want to blow up shit. Like sometimes that stuff gets enhanced in our career. But the biggest thing is the identity crisis.
mm,
And so when you're a part of this brotherhood and sisterhood, and if that's taken away, like my identity was in my camouflage, my identity was in my rank. I forgot who Farron was. So everybody's different, but we're all the same. So you have to find out what that person's dealing with way before military service, because that military life, if you're not getting love from your environment and you join the military and everybody loves the soldier, and then that's not there anymore, then I don't have any love.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at that. Again, you look at the objectification. If these soldiers have been to war and they've done some things that, you know, killed people, that's that objectification. That is the brain saying, "Oh, you're a terrorist, so I can destroy you." But then, when the brain clicks back, "Oh shoot, I killed, 5 Iraqis, but guess what? That was a human being, and what if he has sons and daughters? What about his family?" So you have all these different dynamics, man, that it's not just the military, the label, but it's that human person that has to be addressed, and it's got to be on a case by case individual. You got to create the space to have that conversation. You got to educate the parents and the wife and the spouses, because my behavior was going on, but nobody in my environment knew except one friend, and she was like, "You might need to go to you might need to go get some help. God, you look like you're getting depressed."
Mm.
But my friends and family, nobody paid attention to that, my signs, and I've had soldiers commit suicide, and so it is very serious. But it has to be able, again, the skills we need to teach, some mental health skills, the foundation, the thinking, dialogue skills, healing past relationships, like so much, like I said, case by case. But for me, it was my identity. I had an identity crisis, and if you look at athletes, we're not no different. We're all little young children, grow up. One goes to the military, one goes to the play sports. But you've been playing sports since 8 years old, and you make it to the pros, and you're an athlete, and now you retire from the sports world, or you don't make it to college, or you don't make it, to the next level. Your whole identity is in that sport.
Mm-hmm.
Junior Seau was the best example, unfortunately, who had a great career and took his own life after he retired because he felt there was nothing left. So the identity crisis in athletes and military, we're so similar because we're all youth, but it's that identity. It's the identity crisis and we have that identity crisis even as men, like we talked about. We already have an identity crisis, whether it's we put that identity into a sports team or a clothing brand. Like, when can I just be Farron?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that even look like?
Yeah.
And so identity crisis for me is really at the core of like what's going on with our not just our service member, but people.
Yeah.
So again, that label of, and even this pandemic, the suicide rates have gone up 600%, they say, because of the exclusion, because now people got to sit at home, and you already didn't want to be by yourself, so you already out being social, so you got to deal with your own mind issues, and now you can't go nowhere, and now you got to sit in the house, and you can't talk to nobody, and now your brain is like, remember that thing you should have did, remember that stuff. Now that's why you by yourself, that's why your relationship. Come on, man, nobody wants to hear that. You can't turn that off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can, but it takes work.
Yeah, it's not like a light switch.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So that's for me, it's not just military, it's a human flaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's a flaw that we have as people.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when I was done swimming, I had swam since I was like 9. And when it was time for me to go, I was like, I don't want to go, because I didn't know who I was. And then when I got out of it, they were like, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I don't know, nothing, probably swim some more. Like, I don't know what to do. And like the biggest swimmer in the world, Michael Phelps,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to watch this, so, but like, he still struggles with it, like, because he's done, right? And when he's like an extreme case, because when you're the top of the world for so long in your sport and people love you, people are screaming your name, people are getting tattoos of you, and then you're done. It's like, I have nothing now, because I had put all my effort into that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so now you got to go back as I had to figure out what was next. And so that same inherited gene that almost killed me, I was exposed to say, hey, you could become an advocate. What's an advocate? Oh, you could actually, and the mental health guy showed me like this happens in the world for real. Like people are dying, like athletes, military for real, and you have a voice in that. So instead of all that depression and and worrying about my life, what's next? I'd say, okay, well, let me see what if I have a voice in this. Let me see what my voice can be. And I, it's like finding a new identity, but it gave me purpose.
Hmm.
And so now you have to separate the identity, but also as my purpose. Like so, if you believe like we're all born for a reason. So then now you got to look for that. Like what would you do that you would do it for free? Right? That's what we talk about. Like, what would you just if you could just be somewhere and you could just do that? What you had all the money in the world, what would you just do? And I've discovered that. I was fortunate and blessed to be able to discover that through all of that stuff I went through, and now I can articulate that, and now I want to share that because at the end of the day, I still have to manage my depression and anxiety,
Hmm.
and I still know that I have a voice. If I could serve this country, now I could serve this community, and I have a place there, and they need me. So I get the same, connectedness and camaraderie and love and whatever comes with all that identity with this community about sickle cell trait. Millions of people globally I'm connected to.
Yeah.
And so it changes then you start changing your thought process about yourself. Do I want to really die now? Sometimes, but no.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like a waiting
Sometimes,
thought.
but no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, I love what you're doing, man. It is really important. I honestly, genuinely didn't even know what sickle cell trait was until I hit you
yeah.
up. So there's still a huge untapped group of people that need to hear this stuff. So it's super important what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to kind of end this recording with a little bit of hope.
Okay.
If you're, what would you want to say to someone who maybe, either is in the military going through it, or just a regular person with everything with the weight of the world on their shoulders? You know what I mean? Because a lot of us are
Hmm.
experiencing that right now. What would you want them
Yeah.
to hear to kind of not gear them in the right direction, but at least give them a little, like a couple words of like motivation or positivity right now?
So what I would say is we always want to offer compassion to other people. Give yourself some compassion to yourself. Just give yourself some self-love. Like and you have to be that. A lot of times we tell people what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? No, who are you gonna be first? Like Nike got it off. You don't just do it. It's who you're gonna be, and then the do comes naturally. So you gotta be compassionate. You have to be confident. You have to be strength and understand that there's no wrong life. Like it's just human, it's just being human. And so being able to understand that and mainly really I'm gonna go back to the build a relationship with your parents. And if your parents are lost, you lost your parents, they passed away, write a letter to them and what you would say to them to find that inner peace for yourself. And I think that once you do that, you'll start to see how life opens up. And all this is not unique to you. Everybody's going through something. And we say that everybody's going through something, but you have to be able to be honest with yourself and be honest with the people around you. And I think that's really the core of discovering because nobody can the psychologist, the nobody can point it out to you. Your friends can't point it out to you. It's like when you got balance. Once you got balance, you never lost it. And when you find out what those strains are on your own life that you're putting on your own life, you'll be free from them. And you have to watch how you talk. We describe life so much that we don't say what's so. So when we talk about circumstances and we talk about I'm struggling, those are descriptions of what you're dealing with. But if you say, I got financial issues, how can I get help in my financial issues? I need a place to live. Don't just say I'm struggling. You can't get help. Your mind is trapped in the struggle, and it doesn't allow you to find ways to get help in actually what you're dealing with. Like that's the what's so. And so how we talk is it's all in language.
Hmm.
So we have to watch how you talk, watch what comes out of your mouth, how you say it, and then just apply those, apply those actions and be truthful to yourself. Stop pretending. We pretend to be accepted. I pretended to, you know, I lied to get accepted. And you don't have to pretend. Everybody's dealing with something. So you just have to find your inner peace. And at that point is where life shifts because you're free to be. And I think that's, for me, that's a start.
Love it, brother. Where can my viewers find you?
WDCONSCT.org is my awareness. FarronD.com. All of it's all connected. I got so much, stuff that I care about. So if you go to either one of those sites, you'll find me and the stuff that I'm up to. So WDCONSCT.org or just FarronD.com. Or just search my name. I've been podcasting for a long time, so I got a lot of stuff out there. And my awareness too.
Love it, man. And with that, we are done. I'll put all those links down below. Farron, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you for coming on. Seriously.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you for inviting me and accepting, offering me to be on your show, man. I'm really grateful to be on the other side of the microphone now.
Yeah. No, this was fun, man. Yeah. And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.